Okay, dear students, good day. Today we are going to start our lecture number 13 of psycholinguistics, and we are going to continue from our previous lecture from number 12, and the topic is going to be the same. So we were in the previous lecture, we were studying about self-monitoring. So in this lecture we are going to continue with Bach and Levitt in 1994 gave a model of speech production. So as you see, in this, the grammatical encoding, how you encode or how you understand grammatical rules. So the message would come down into functional lexical selection, function assignment, word exchanges, how you exchange word. So that would be your lexical selection and your function assignment. Then you would process it further for the positional, that stranding errors constitute assembly and inflection. Once again processing, going down to phonological encoding, which then processes to output system. So that would be sound errors. So model of speech production would be message, function, position, and then phonological encoding. So in this you can have word exchanges, you can have stranding errors, and then you can have sound errors. And this all would matter and depend on your grammatical encoding. So further we would study, the next thing we would study would be comprehension, continuing from our previous slides. So in comprehension, now the process that is understanding. Now the process by which listeners come to an interpretation of a stream of speech. This is called the construction process. So the construction process would be what? In the process in which a listener would come to an interpretation, would come to an understanding or translation of a stream of speech. So when I am like continuously speaking all at once, continuously with sentences, then that time when the listener is processing that, that would be how comprehension works. Now this is called the construction process. So like for right now, I am delivering a stream of speech to you, and you at the moment are the listeners, and you are going through the process of construction at the moment, which is helping you process the language. Now the process in which listeners use these interpretations for their intended purpose would be the utilization process. So the process by which listeners would interpret a stream of speech or understand it would be different, and then the process in which listeners would use interpretations for their intended purpose. Like they would take a word and find they have their intended purpose is something else that they want to understand. So they would take that, and that would be the utilization process. So the construction process would be when you're trying to translate the words, and then utilization process is how you use those interpretations and utilize them in the process to create language. The construction process. Now, in the construction process, you have raw speech, which goes on to, moving on to constituents of surface structure. Now, raw speech can go into three parts: utilization and finished interpretation, all connected. Raw speech can move on to constituents of surface structure, also move into proposition and interpretation, which then comes up to proposition also, and then it moves on to the finished interpretation. So this is the whole process of how the language would be, that you go through raw speech, you take the utilization, then you take the constituents of the service structure, whatever the structure of the sentences, you utilize it, then you move it into translation and interpretation, and then you come to the finished interpretation of what exactly did that mean. Now, first, language acquisition, how children learn language. Language acquisition, how they acquire language. Language acquisition is the process by which language develops in human. So language acquisition would be called a process जिससे जैसे इंसानों के अंदर language develop कैसे होती है, how do they create language, how do they develop language. So the first language acquisition concerns the development of language in children. बच्चों के अंदर लैंग्वेज एक्वायर कैसे आप करते हैं, ठीक है, एंड हाउ लैंग्वेज इज डेवलप्ड इन चिल्ड्रन, वो डेवलप कैसे होती है. देन सेकंड लैंग्वेज एक्विजिशन फोकसेस ऑन लैंग्वेज डेवलपमेंट इन एडल्ट्स. सो सेकंड लैंग्वेज एक्विजिशन आपकी क्या होगी, वो फोकस करेगी लैंग्वेज डेवलपमेंट्स पे, ठीक है, एडल्ट्स में कैसे डेवलप होती है लैंग्वेज इन एडल्ट्स. नाउ हिस्टोरिकली theories and theorists may have emphasized either nature or nurture as the most important explanatory factor for acquisition. So historically जो है theories and theorists में they may have emphasized, उन्होंने emphasize में भी किया हो either nature or nurture, नेचर या नर्चर को उन्होंने एम्फसाइज कर दिया एज द मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट एक्सप्लेनेटरी फैक्टर फॉर एक्विजिशन. फॉर एक्वायरिंग अ लैंग्वेज द मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट फैक्टर वुड बी बाय nature or by nurture. So either we are learning it, we either acquire it as children, or we learn a second language as adults. Now Chomsky's universal grammar. Children are born with a hardwired language acquisition device, LAD, in their brains. So what we say is that children are born with a hardwired language acquisition. That means उनके दिमाग के अंदर एक लैंग्वेज एक्विजिशन डिवाइस है, LAD जिसको बोलेंगे, ठीक है, बच्चों के दिमाग के अंदर वो उसके साथ पैदा होते हैं, ठीक है. Without an innate ability for language, human infants would be incapable of learning such complete speech patterns in a natural human environment. So, according to Chomsky's view, innate ability, built-in ability होती है humans के अंदर, especially infants में, to make it able for them to learn the language. And it would make them capable, and if they don't have that ability in them, that built-in ability, then they wouldn't be able to learn the complete speech patterns, which normally would occur in a natural human environment. So according to Chomsky, children have by birth have this language acquisition device, LAD, in their brains. Now learning condition of L1. Learning condition of L1, now that is your native language, your first language acquisition. The L1 is picked up at home in the most natural situations, guided and controlled by those who are near and dear to a child. So L1 जो है मोस्टली क्या है, इट्स पिक्ड अप एट होम इन द मोस्ट नेचुरल सिचुएशंस, यानी घर पे बच्चे उसको लर्न करते हैं लैंग्वेज को, फर्स्ट अपने नेटिव लैंग्वेज को, एंड इट्स पिक्ड अप इन द मोस्ट नेचुरल सिचुएशंस, यानी नेचुरल सिचुएशंस में आप पिक करते हैं, एंड गाइडेड एंड कंट्रोल्ड बाय दोज हु आर नियर एंड डियर टू अ चाइल्ड, यानी उसके पेरेंट्स, आपके ब्रदर एंड सिस्टर्स, आपके एल्डर्स, दे वुड कंट्रोल एंड गाइड द चाइल्ड इन लर्निंग the language or picking up the language at home very easily. Now the learning of L1 takes place along with other aspects of biological growth such as walking. Learning of the first language, आपका first native language का, वो साथ साथ आपकी biological growth भी हो रही है. A child is learning how to walk. जब वो चलना सीखता है उसके साथ साथ वो बोलना भी सीखता है. So the learning of L1 is governed by the principles of proximity, usefulness, concreteness, particularity and interest. So learning 1 का जो है principles basically किस चीज से governed है, with proximity, with usefulness, यानी उसकी closeness क्या है principles की, उसके इस्तेमाल कैसा है, उसके concreteness and particularity of and interest of how a child would take interest or how the grown-ups would take interest in teaching the child the language. Now factors affecting L1 acquisition. अब L1 acquisition आपकी affect कैसे होती है, ठीक है, that would be physical environment. So the physical environment would make a huge difference in how a child would acquire a language or how he would be able to learn a language. So physical environment आपकी बहुत ज़्यादा count करती है, ठीक है, where you are, at what moment you are when the child is learning the language, the material surroundings elements of a child. For example, dog, house, cat, tree, table, and then the social environment. So then the materials जो है जो बच्चे को surround कर रही है, that would help him learn the language. Like when if there is a dog present in the house, the child can see it and a parent can point to the dog and say, this is your dog. So the child will learn the word dog and know about that. Then house, he's living in a house, that once again is a part that he would learn. Then cat, if there's a cat in the house. Then if there is a tree, table, these are different words that a child can learn from the materials around him. He'll know that if a parent points out that this is a table, the child would immediately pick that language. So physical environment also matters. These things surrounding the child would affect the child learning the language. Then the social environment. Now, social environment would be the family and neighborhood. What language the family is speaking, and in the neighborhood, what neighbors are using, what language are they using. Then physical and economic resources. So the economic condition of the family, physical and economic resources, once again, how economically strong the family is, that also depends on how and what way or what manner the child is going to learn. Like for example, a poor person in his home, the kid will not have toys, the kid won't learn much, won't know about so many things. That vice versa, if we see in a rich family, a child will have many toys and he would learn about more things. He would be exposed to more things in the social environment, and which would help create more things and more knowledge to acquire the language. But in a poor family, a child would have very less knowledge and resources. So motivation, then what motivates a child for learning a language? Internally, the need for food, warmth, shelter, constant care, love and affection. So the motivation would be that our innerly need for food and warmth and shelter and constant care and love and affection, that affects how we learn a language. Then the external factors would be social interaction, how we interact socially with people, self-expression, how we express ourselves, creative behavior, what sort of creative behavior a child has in him. For example, children sometimes talk to cat, dog or dolls. So once again that also matters. Children when they are playing, बच्चे जब खेलते हैं आपने देखा होगा कि वो कैट से या डॉग से बात करेंगे या गुड़ियों से बात करेंगे, डॉल से, खिलौनों से बात करते हैं, ठीक है. So those things also are what motivates a child. So like I remember when I was a kid, I used to play with dolls and I used to talk to them also. So when I was a little baby, so that's what motivated me, generating, creating different language and discourse. Then an outstanding feature of the early language learning experience is egocentricity. So an outstanding feature, बहुत पहले in an early stages of learning language, egocentricity was a big part. Children only pick up language items that are absolutely essential for them. बच्चे सिर्फ वही चीज़ पिक करते हैं लैंग्वेज में से जो उनके लिए बहुत एब्सोल्युटली नेसेसरी होता है. वो full sentences बोलना नहीं सीखते. They don't learn to speak full sentences immediately. They'll just learn the words that they need immediately and they think that are important for them. The earliest pronouns for a child to learn would be I, me, my and mine. Like my doll. I want to eat. I want a drink. Me, my. These are the earliest pronouns that a child would learn. Now, stages of language acquisition. So, pre-babbling. In the stages of language, how the child is acquiring a language. Pre-babbling would be when a child is learning and making sounds, but those sounds cannot be differentiated or turned into words. So, it is difficult to test children when they are first born. So it's very difficult to test them जब नए पैदा होते हैं बच्चे, उस वक्त नहीं टेस्ट किया जा सकता. But we can measure their interest in speech sounds by measuring their sucking rate. ये we once again said, when आप उनको चूसनी देंगे तो वो जिस हिसाब से या फीडर को जिस तरह वो sucking rate उनकी होगी, जिस तरह वो उसको यूज़ करेंगे, उस तरह हम उनके speech sounds को measure कर सकते हैं. Now, by doing this, we have discovered that they come pre-equipped to head phonetic contrast, even for languages not spoken around them. So sometimes they even, they've come into the world with that ability to head phonetic contrast, even when the languages that जो उनके इर्द गिर्द नहीं बोले जाते, even then they are getting attracted to it. Now, the first cry of an infant functions as the crude starting point which makes possible all activities of the lungs and the speech organs. बच्चे का जो पहला रोना होता है, first time when the baby is born, और वो जो पहली दफ़ा रोता है, that is a function, that is a crude starting point, यानी बिल्कुल basic raw starting point है वो, which makes possible all activities of the lungs and speech organs. यानी वो आपके speech organs को बच्चे के trigger हो रहा होता है, and उसके lungs, उसके how the air would come out of the lungs, that would matter in this also. So बच्चे का first रोना उसकी lungs में air जा रही है, and that's the first sounds that the child learns to make, and then how it affects the speech organs. Now, babbling would, if you would continue babbling, now sounds produced in the first few months after birth, which include sounds that do and do not occur in the language of the household. So, in the babbling, when a child is learning how to speak a language, the sounds produced in the first few months, in the first months, शुरू के महीनों में जो बच्चा सीखता है, which include sounds that do or do not occur in the language of the household. Sometimes even बच्चा ऐसी आवाज़ें निकालता है या ऐसी sounds create करता है जो even household में ज़रूरी नहीं कि घर में कोई और ऐसी आवाज़ें कर रहा हो तो वो उसको बच्चा imitate कर रहा है. But the child would do that on its own. Now, even deaf children babble, make sounds. They seem to be testing out their vocal apparatus. They're testing out their vocal apparatus and perhaps tuning the articulation to their own audition. और अपनी आवाज़ अपने कानों से सुनने के लिए वो अपने आप को ट्यून कर रहे होते हैं. So they babble with hand gestures similar to the vocal babbling of hearing children. So जो बच्चे डेफ पैदा होते हैं वो हाथों से जेस्चर्स से अपने जो है वो बैबल करते हैं, एंड इवन सिमिलर टू वही जो वोकली जो आवाज़ के साथ बच्चे हियरिंग चाइल्ड वुड मेक द साउंड्स. So a deaf child would make the same sounds with gestures. So they are testing and tuning themselves at that time for listening to their own voice or trying to use their vocal apparatus. Now, holophoristic would refer to the one-word stage in which children produce one-word sentences, usually between 12 and 18 months. So, 12 और 18 months के बीच का जब बच्चा होता है, at that time बच्चा experience करता है single word production. यानी वो एक single word बोलना सीखेगा, मामा, पापा, book, bottle, water, whatever. आप उसको जो बच्चे को सिखाएंगे, those are the words that refer to the one stage. That will be a holophoristic term in which a child is producing a one word sentence. Now at this stage, utterances are one word long. So उसके जो utterances, जो उसके sounds होंगे, that would just contain one word. Though they often contain complex messages. Now, children have been shown to understand differences in word order at this stage, even though they can't produce sentences with different word orders. So, इस stage पे kids would maybe they would show an understanding of differences in the word order or how the words are produced at the stage, even though that they cannot produce the sentences or different words themselves. But they can understand it. So by their utterances, you can see how they understand that. Now, two-word stage. Now, the two-word stage around the beginning of the second year children begin to produce sentences of two words with clear syntactic and semantic relations. In the two-word stage, now around the beginning of the second year, जब 2 साल का बच्चा होता है, then he starts to produce sentences of two words or clear syntactic and semantic relations. यानी उसका meaning clear होता है and उसका structure सही होता है. By the second year, he starts producing two words के साथ जो है ना sentences बनाना. First 12 to 18 months, he's just producing a single word, and then he moves on to produce double words. So most children go through a stage where sentences seem to be limited to two words. There can be a large variety of two-word patterns. However, the sentences continue to encode much more complex meaning. So by the time the child is growing up, so most children go through that stage, वो आहिस्ता-आहिस्ता सीख रहे होते हैं, and उनके maybe two words तक limited होगा, but उसकी meaning बहुत complex हो चुका होगा उस वक्त तक. Instead of a single word, they start learning the complex meanings of words and then trying to form them into sentences. Now, telegraphic speech. Telegraphic speech would be utterances of children after the two-word stage when many grammatical morphemes are omitted. So, utterances of children, how children would utter after a two-word stage when many grammatical morphemes are omitted, when they're taken out, they're not using grammatical structures. And they're omitting or हटा रहे हैं morphemes को, grammatical morphemes को, and still they're using the two-word stage of language. Now, after the two-word stage, there is an explosion in the child's capacity to form sentences. Suddenly after those two words का जब वो sentences बोलना शुरू करता है, उसके बाद एकदम से explosion है, and then he learns to form sentences, and developmental patterns are more difficult to describe. And उस point पे वो developmental patterns जो है ना वो explain करना ज़रा मुश्किल हो जाता है. At this point, it is better to simply test particular aspects and constructions from adult grammars to determine which aspects the children have acquired. So इस point पे maybe it's better to test the adults grammar और ये जानने के लिए कि बच्चे ने किस aspect से उसको acquire किया या हासिल किया. Now, internalization of linguistic system. Internalization of linguistic system would be the entire language learning is a process of language internalizations of systems. So, internalization of linguistic system, आपका ये नहीं linguistic system किस तरह चलता है? The entire language learning, पूरी language learning जो है आपकी, how to learn a language, is a process of internalizations of systems. Internalization of linguistic systems occurs at a variety of levels. ये variety of levels पे occur करती है. An infant is bombarded by the language utterances of the people around. So, इसमें से एक चीज़ internalization में क्या system में चल रही है कि बच्चे को बहुत सारी आवाज़ें आ रही होती हैं language की. People are talking all around him, and that child is acquiring that language in that way. He's hearing all the sounds. He's hearing all the utterances that people make around him. So, random articulation would be stimulated by the pleasurable experiences of the child. The main stimulus reflex produces non-distinctive sounds. So, random articulation में क्या चीज़ होगी कि बच्चा pleasurable experiences अपने explain कर रहा होगा through the sounds that he makes, like he laughs or he giggles or the sounds that the child makes. The main stimulus would be reflex, produces non-distinctive sounds. So they aren't distinctive sounds, but it does produce, that reflex does. Like if you make a child laugh, then the child will giggle or laugh and make such sounds pleasurable if he's feeling pleasurable. And those are non-distinctive sounds. Now, auditory organs क्या है? Internalization. An infant takes in whatever it can. बच्चा वो सारी चीज़ें हासिल कर सकता है, जितना वो कर सकता है उतना वो हासिल करने की कोशिश करता है. So auditory organs में ये आ गया. Then production. Now in production internalizes the basic sound system of a language. एक proper language के sound system पे base करती है. Phonology produces distinctive sounds. So phonology would produce distinctive sounds. Random articulation now stimulated by the pleasurable experience of a child, the main stimulus, reflex, produces non-distinctive sounds once again, random articulation में. Then auditory organs once again, internalization, and infant takes in whatever it can, once again it's taking in whatever it can. Production, once again producing, internalizes the basic sound system of a language. Phonology produces, then getting similar with the basic morphological sets of the language, etc. Then MLU. MLU, now what does MLU mean? Mean length of utterance. MLU means mean length of utterance. A measure used to refer to the number of words or morphemes in a child's utterance. एक बच्चे की utterance में हम उसके number of words या morphemes को कैसे measure करते हैं? हम mean length of utterance से measure करते हैं. Now more accurate would be measure of acquisition stage than chronological age of child. So इसका हम chronological age हम नहीं factor देख रहे बच्चे का, ठीक है क्या? Chronologically वो किस साल से age to age वो gain कर रहा है, but more accurate would be the measure of acquisition stage, वो किस तरह stage by stage language को acquire कर रहा है. Now parentage and baby talk. Now parentage would be parents talking to children or your youngers, ठीक है? Refer to the sort of speech which children receive when they are young. Like we make weird sort of song sounds when we are speaking to children. We make those sounds, we make utterances, we baby talk with them. Things that an adult would find funny, but with a baby we would use such things. Now characteristics would be shorter syllables, like we would use short syllables, so short words. Parsing down words to phonemes. Words को phonemes में parse down कर देते हैं. Highly repetitive usage, we would repeat things again and again. Raising pitch, making our voice up and down, raising the pitch of the sound of the voice. Then slowly down the pace of speaking. Slowing down, हम थोड़ा सा slow कर देते हैं. बच्चे के साथ बोलने के लिए हम इतना तेज नहीं बोलते. We would go in a very much slower pace. यानी हमारी speed बोलने की जो है वो कम हो जाती है. Simplifying the subject matter and sentence structure. Subject matter या sentence structure को हम simplify कर देते हैं, ज़रा easy words में बच्चे के लिए use करते हैं ताकि बच्चे को समझने में आसानी हो. Then, like for example, about what? Names of relatives, for relatives. रिश्तेदारों के नामों को हम शॉर्ट कर देंगे, ठीक है? We can give them nicknames, ठीक है? Good and bad behavior के लिए हम बच्चों को सिखाते हैं. Animal names, we teach them animal names. Eating, what they are going to eat. Sleeping patterns and bathroom manners. Those are the things that we start in baby talk. We teach the children in different words. Now baby talk would be that uses sounds and nonsense words. Baby talk would be something that creates sounds, जैसे हम बच्चों को बहलाने के लिए sounds use करते हैं, and nonsense words, ऐसे words जिनका कोई बड़ों के लिए कोई मायने नहीं होते. So it involves the use of vocabulary and syntax that is overly simplified and reduced. So ये involve क्या करता है? Use of vocabulary and syntax, आपके vocabulary and आपके structure को जो हम extra उसको reduce कर देते हैं और simplify कर देते हैं बच्चे के लिए. So involves modification in vocabulary. Once again we use new words for a baby, or we would modify our vocabulary according to the child's knowledge. So pre-birth speech and language milestones. Now from before the child is born to the time it's born, and then 7 years old children, auditory skills begin to develop. Auditory skills begin to develop since a child hasn't been born yet. From that time to the age of 7, he starts beginning to develop those auditory skills. And necessary for sound association, that is necessary for the child to associate it with sounds. Then from let's say 0 to 6 months, cooing and babbling, making sounds like oo, ah, ee, the kids make that, the babies make that. Continual awareness of sound, that is an awareness of sound, turns to sound, stops crying when spoken to. बच्चे को अगर बोला जाए तो उसका ध्यान एकदम से उसकी तरफ पलटेगा, वो देखेगा बच्चा साउंड की तरफ, या बच्चा रोना बंद कर देता है जब हम उसके साथ बोलना शुरू कर देते हैं उसको तसल्ली से, प्यार से. Uses eye gaze to indicate interest, and बच्चा इंटरेस्ट कैसे शो करता है? आंखों से. If he is interested in you, then he'll look at you, and the eye gaze would indicate the interest of the child. Then from 7 months to 12 months old. The first two words appear. They are often people or nouns. पहला जो है ना words appear होना शुरू होते हैं 7 months से लेके 12 months की age तक बेबी के. ठीक है, they are often people or nouns. ठीक है, some syllable is repeated like mama, dada, dad, papa. These words are used and repeated. Child demonstrates increased understanding of daily routines. और वो daily routine की understanding उसकी increase होती है और वो demonstrate करता है ये अपने उसमें ability में. Then by the age of 12 months, now child says 3 to 5 words. 12 महीने का जब हो जाता है, ठीक है, 1 year, then he starts saying about 3 to 5 words उसकी vocabulary maximum होती है. Child recognizes his or her name, अपना नाम पहचानना शुरू करता है, and understands simple instructions, और simple instructions understand करना शुरू कर देता है. Like we tell the kid, ऐसे नहीं करो, don't do that, come here. These things, ये simple instructions हैं जो child would start learning. So by the age he's learning to recognize his name, अपना नाम पहचानना शुरू करता है, understand करना शुरू हो जाता है, simple instructions, initiates familiar words, gestures and sounds, और खुद वो familiar words, gestures and sounds create करता है. Then child understands common objects and actions. So a child would understand simple things like a cookie or eat, juice, ये चीज़ें उसको समझ आना शुरू हो जाएंगी. So by the time the child becomes 18 months old, that's 1.5 years, a child uses about 10 to 20 words at age 18 months, including names. So names included, 18 month की एज तक बच्चा starts to use about 10 to 20 words. Now recognition of pictures of familiar persons, objects, तस्वीरें पहचाना शुरू कर देता है, ये objects पहचानना शुरू कर देता है. Early two-word combinations of words emerge. So two-word combinations बनना शुरू हो जाते हैं बच्चे के दिमाग में और वो सामने आना शुरू हो जाता है. Needs are requested verbally such as more, up. जैसे बच्चे को जो है ना अपनी needs express करना, to express it in language is more easier. The child can say, give me some more food, more water, or pick me up. That means like raising their hands and telling the adult to pick the child up. The child will point, gesture, follow simple commands, imitate simple actions, hum or sing. So the child can point, इशारा कर सकता है, gesture कर सकता है, simple commands को follow कर सकता है. I can imitate simple actions को imitate कर लेगा, और hum और sing, और sound of song भी create हो सकती है. Distinguishes print from non-print, और print को non-print से distinguish कर लेता है. 24 months का, now when a child is 24 months old, let's say for 2 years old, a child understands simple questions and commands. A child would understand simple questions and commands, identifies familiar actions, activities in pictures, for example sleeping, eating, identify करना शुरू हो जाता है. Follows directions to put objects on, off, in. Games में आप बच्चों को जो है ना कह सकते हो put it in, put it off, put it on, ये चीज़ें समझना शुरू कर देता है. Puts two words together on average, किसी भी average पे वो 2 words को इकट्ठा कर देता है. Sentence length of up to 3 words. A child can make sentence length go up to 3 words. Child will refer to self by name, अपने आप को refer करेगा अपने नाम से. Labels pictures को नाम दे सकता है वो. Start to use the negative not go, I don't want to go. Negative form of language use करना शुरू कर देता है. Final S is used for plurals. S को use करना शुरू कर देता है plurals के लिए. vocabulary jumps to 300 words during the year. तो एक साल के अंदर vocabulary बच्चे की जो है ना वो 300 words तक jump कर जाती है. In fact, between the ages of 2 and 4, kids may increase their vocabulary to 2 words per day. So, by the age of 2 or 4 के age के in between, a kid will increase his vocabulary for 2 words per day के हिसाब से ज़्यादा वो vocabulary gain करना शुरू कर देगा. Children will stay with one activity about 6 to 7 minutes, और किसी एक एक्टिविटी पे वो 6 से 7 मिनट रहेंगे, उसके बाद they'll move on and move to something else. By the age of 2.5 years, 30 months, a child has about 450 word vocabulary. Child is able to give his or her first name. आप नाम पूछें 2.5 साल के बच्चे से तो they can tell you his name. Child uses past tense, plurals and combines nouns and verbs. Begins to identify objects from a group by their function and parts. For example, which one has wheels? Which one can we eat? So, वो identify करना शुरू कर देता है for a group by their functions and parts. ठीक है, for example, which one has wheels? किसके wheels है? Which one can we eat? हम क्या खा सकते हैं? Begins to use verbs with ing endings like eating, I am eating, or I am sleeping. Early concepts such as big, little are identified also. Child will use no, not, and answer where in questions. By the age of 3 years, now by the age of 3 years, a child will name at least one color. So at least minimum भी अगर हो तो वो एक color का उसको नाम ज़रूर आता होगा by the age of 3. Child will often talk during play or when alone, talking to their dolls or toys. Child can tell a basic story or idea. Child can use 3 to 4 word sentences. Begins to understand not. Can identify items in a familiar category or group and show me the animal. Child can have a vocabulary of up to 1,000 words. Children are often able to tell their name and street also by the age of 3. By the age of 4 now, child will follow 2 to 3 step commands. Child will ask many questions including who, why, who is this, why are we going here, why are we doing this. Child talks in 4 to 5 word sentences. 4 से 5 word के उसके sentences होंगे. Understands and verbalizes spatial concepts more rapidly such as on, under, next to. Child will talk in the past tense correctly और past tense में भी correctly वो बोल सकेगा. Now, by the age of 5 years old, a child defines objects by their function. वो function के हिसाब से objects को define करना शुरू कर देगा. Identify spatial concepts such as on, behind. So child uses 5 to 6 word sentences. Child understands many opposites. उलट चीजें भी सीखना और पहचानना शुरू कर देता है. A child can use different tenses, past, present and future tense use करना शुरू कर देता है, and many sentence types. By the age of 6 and 7 years old, a child is developing phonological sound letter awareness skills and sound word segmentation skills. So 6-7 साल की age तक child is developing his phonological, जो phonological skills आपकी क्या होंगे, आपकी sound and letter की skills, awareness skills, and that would be how he's aware of those, and segmentation skills, वो आपके sound and word के skills होंगे, and can generate creative sentences also. Understands time space concepts such as before, after, first, second and last. ये चीजें concepts बच्चे 6-7 साल की एज में समझना शुरू कर देता है. So when to be concerned? Point to an object when it's named. When a child points to an object when it's named. Recognize names of familiar people. Objects and body parts को recognize करना, nose, ear, when a kid can start pointing to that. Say about 50 words. Use simple phrases by linking 2 words such as me up for pick me up, and use simple pronouns he, she and me, and prepositions with and by, most children are saying simple words such as mama and dada by age 1. But it's important to remember that children vary greatly in their speech development. So mostly child जो है वो 1 साल की एज तक मामा और दादा टाइप के या पापा वर्ड्स जो है वो सीख लेते हैं. लेकिन once again speech development हर child की different है. So there's a different way how a child would develop. So some kids would learn fast and some wouldn't. Even so, a doctor would likely be concerned if a 2-year-old was not yet speaking. Children at this age can typically. So अगर 2 साल का बच्चा बोल नहीं रहा तो that is something परेशान होने के लिए बात है. Then a doctor would be worried about that because उस age तक 2 साल की age तक बच्चा बोलना शुरू कर देता है typically. A child whose speech isn't progressing should be checked by a doctor. Speech delays occur in up to 10% of young children. So a child whose speech isn't progressing, कोई जिसकी speech progress नहीं कर रही है 2 साल की तक अगर वो नहीं बोल रहा सही तरह, then the child should be checked by a doctor. Now speech delays occur up to 10% of young children. The causes would include being a twin. अगर जुड़वा बच्चे हुए हैं जब भी उनमें से एक मे बी लेट बोलना शुरू करें, स्लो डेवलपमेंट, उसकी डेवलपमेंट मेंटली स्लो हो, मेंटल रिटार्डेशन यानी ही इज मेंटली नॉट फिट, ऑटिज्म. In addition, children living in bilingual homes may experience some speech delays as they learn to interpret and use 2 languages. This is normal. और children कई दफ़ा जिस घर में 2 लैंग्वेज 2 ज़ुबानें बोल रही जा रही हों उसमें बच्चों को कई दफ़ा वो थोड़ा टाइम लेते हैं सीखने में लैंग्वेज या बोलना शुरू करने में क्योंकि वो 2 लैंग्वेजेस को इंटरप्रेट कर रहे होते हैं, उनकी मीनिंग्स अंडरस्टैंड कर रहे होते हैं एंड दे आर लर्निंग हाउ टू यूज़ 2 लैंग्वेजेस. So the acquisition of phonology, morphology, syntax, semantic and discourse in children. So now what we are going to study is the acquisition, how children acquire the use of phonology, morphology, syntax, semantic and discourse in children. Now the acquisition of phonology in children at early perception. By 1 or 2 months of age, perhaps from birth, infants have the basic sensory capabilities to discriminate speech sounds. High amplitude sucking. So 1-2 महीने की age से or from birth they would have the basic sensory capabilities to discriminate speech sounds. By the time of 6 months, and infants are able to discriminate any phonological contrast independent of the surrounding language. Visually reinforced head turn. So 6 महीने के टाइम तक बच्चा जो है phonological contrast सीखता है independent of the surroundings of language. ठीक है, language surrounding से independently. Between the end of their first year and the beginning of their 5th year, children learn to distinguish among words that differ in only a single segment. Infant perception starts to resemble adult perception. So infant perception जो है वो resemble करना शुरू करती है adult perception को. Now order of acquisition. How the child starts acquiring the language. Vowel contrast would be the first one. So vowel contrast first, then consonant contrast would be the second, then the manner, then voicing in stops, and then fricative contrast. Those would be the order of acquiring a language. Now during the preverbal vocalization, 2 to 4 months old, mainly vowel sounds, palatal or velar, rest in place of the tongue. So rest of the first year, anatomical and neuromotor factors play a critical role during this development. So vocal tract length depend करती है, position of tongue, velum, neuromuscular control of the tongue, all starts developing by that time. Increased control of laryngeal voicing and oral articulatory mechanisms. Oral articulatory mechanisms or control जो है आपकी voicing पे, that starts increasing. Labial and dental sounds are created. Both periodic and aperiodic sounds are also created. Pitch and loudness manipulated, how you can manipulate or change them. Gradually, babbling starts to resemble adult-like syllables. True to consonant plus vowels. आहिस्ता आहिस्ता babbling जो बच्चे की sounds utterances हैं, it sort of resembles what how adults would use words. So during the second year, now general increase in use of true consonants labials more frequent than coronals. So second year में general increase in use of true consonants labials would be more frequent than coronals. The coronals are more frequent than velars, then stops and nasals are more common. Then fricatives less frequent, and they require more precise articulatory control. Now vowels tend to be the basic cardinal vowels like I, A, O, and U. CEV is the preferred syllable structure. Omission of word and final consonant. Omission of fricative or liquid in cluster. And early word consists of one or two syllables. Now constraints on speech production. Syllable deletion. For example, animals, QMZ, final consonant deletion would be because Pika, consonant harmony, for example, yellow. Cluster reduction, for example, pretty, smile, blocks. Fronting of velars, palatals, for example, cow, show. Stopping would be, for example, move, juice. Gliding would be, for example, love, red. ये glide कर रहे हैं ना words एक दूसरे के साथ. So simplification strategies जो है substitutions, for example, FIS to fish, FISH, deletion of ISH in fish. Cluster reduction would be spider, going to say in the word spider. Metathesis, snow, nose. Then assimilation, dog, dod, duck, guck. बच्चा इस तरह बोलता है. Dog को अगर उसने pronounce नहीं कर सक रहा, assimilate, he can't do it, then he would, for dog he would say dod, for duck he would say guck. Chain shifts, truck as duck, duck as guck. Substitution and plus assimilation. So avoidance would be comprehends the word but avoids it in articulation. So phonological idioms, child words which do not follow the patterns of sound changes attested elsewhere in the child's production. So phonological idioms में child words जो उस pattern को follow नहीं करते sound changes को, they are attested elsewhere in a child's production. So regression, a phonological idiom taking on a less mature form to become consistent with the rest of the system. Rest of the system के साथ consistent होने में help करता है. So individual variations in acquiring phonology. How you would acquire phonology. Whether the child's earliest productions are segmentally detailed or whether they are better described as maintaining this suprasegmental pattern of the ambient language at the expense of phonological accuracy. So individual variations in acquiring phonology, different हर एक की different variations हैं language और phonology acquire करने में. Now whether the child's earliest productions are segmentally detailed या तो segmentally detailed है उसकी early जो production words language जो वो सीख रहा है, or whether they are better described as maintaining या फिर वो maintain कर रहे हैं suprasegmental pattern को of the ambient language at the expense of phonological accuracy के साथ नहीं अगर वो pronounce कर पा रहे. Whether they avoid words which they cannot produce and as a result give relatively accurate renditions of the words they do produce, or whether they attempt many words resulting in substantial deviations through the adult forms. So whether वो avoid कर रहे हों word forms को which they cannot produce, जो वो produce नहीं कर पा रहे, and as a result give relatively accurate renditions of the words that they do produce, or whether they attempt many words, resulting in substantial deviations from the adult forms. So perception and production of words in a child, audition, meaning and articulation. So it would go from the audition to the meaning and then articulating the words. Then meaning would move on ahead to phonology, which would be a combination of audition and articulation. Now, articulation is moving towards audition and the time, in the same time, and going to phonology and then towards meaning. So the acquisition of morphology, word comprehension, mapping auditory form onto meanings, the concept of here and now in parentheses. So word comprehension, कैसे वो word समझते हैं, mapping auditory form into meanings, how they would form the meanings, the concept of here and now in parentheses. Children start to show knowledge of morphophonemic rules around age 4. In English, children also regularize irregular forms. English children would also regularize the irregular forms also, and they would recognize it. So modular connectionist network for the acquisition of morphology. Now how morphology is acquired? The root IPR, and audition. Audition and articulation are vice versa going. Audition is going towards inflection of IPR also, and root IPR. And articulation, root IPR is leading to articulation. So inflection would come down to inflection IPR, root would come down to root IPR. Then they would both be connected, and vice versa would go. Root IPR would go to articulation, and audition would come to inflection IPR. Now lexicon acquired. Lexicon, how you acquire lexicon. The principle of here and now. The principle of here and now. Content words before function words. How content words would act or react before functioning words. For example, nouns leads to verbs, leads to adjectives. So basic level category, generic nouns, then over extension versus under extension. Then strategies for acquiring lexicon, how they would acquire lexicon. Then the reference, everything has a reference. Then object scope matters a lot. The concept of bicycle, extendability, black cat, white cat, categorical scope, hyphonemy, novel name, nameless category, putting new words in the mental lexicon, conventionality, use of familiar words. So acquisition of syntax, the stage of child language where it progresses from mere concatenation of lexical items to adult language. Then child acquires syntax and grammatical morphemes at the same time. Then learning a grammatical morpheme. Now how a child would learn grammatical morpheme, how does it sound, including allomorphs. Then where is it likely to occur in a sentence, the distribution of it, and what is it used for, syntactic function, the syntactic function of the language. So stages in acquiring syntax. Now noun compounding, preschool, agentive. So noun compounding preschool, that would be the first stage in acquiring syntax, how to acquire the structure of language. Then agentive suffix, ERs, how to start adding ER. Then instrumental suffix, ER, with the adjectival Y. And then adverbial, LY also. These are all forms. The acquisition of semantics and pragmatics. Now communication intents, egocentrism, discourse organization in conversation, competence, maxims, rules, speech acts, conversational routines, openings, turn taking, closing, That would also, so discourse organization in conversation, आपके conversation में discourse organization क्या होगी, ठीक है, competence and maximum rules क्या होंगे, ठीक है, speech acts क्या है, conversational routines, opening, turn taking, how you take turns, closing a conversation, then conversational exchange. Now adjacency pair, question and answer session, complex exchanges when you're difficult exchanges that you're interacting, then interactive speech, turn taking, simultaneously talk, and interruption. So language and communication, further we would study language and communication, animal communication, wild children and language, what wild children and language would do. So animal communication, first of all, animal communication is any behavior on the part of one animal that has an effect on the current or future behavior of another animal. So animal communication कैसी होगी? Also it's a part of psycholinguistics when you're studying how language behavior works. So animal communication is any behavior on the part of one animal that has an effect or on the current or the future behavior of another animal. The study of animal communication is zoosemiotics. Then animal communication is a rapidly growing field nowadays. And even in the 21st century so far, many prior understandings related to diverse fields such as personal symbolic name use, animal emotions, animal culture and learning, and even sexual conduct, so long thought to be well understood, have been revolutionized. So they have been revolutionized during that. And then intraspecies versus interspecies communication. The sender and receiver of a communication may be of the same species or of different species also. The majority of animal communication is interspecies between two or more individuals of the same species. However, there are some important instances of interspecies communication between two or more individuals or different species. So that would also be a part of it. Now what we want to see is that students should understand all of these, how language is used in animals also. So the majority of animal communication, because animal communication is also a part of psycholinguistics, so however there are some important instances of interspecies communication between two or more individuals of different species also. Then for example, now let's say I've given you a picture of a bird now. So what is this bird doing? With whom does he communicate? So this bird will not be communicating with humans or with a dog. A bird will communicate with the same species of his own and communicate with its own species of bird. And that's how similar animals would work. So interspecies communication, prey to predator, predator to prey, symbiotic species. Now how prey to predator would communicate, how predator to prey would communicate, and how the symbiotic species would. So prey to predator, warning coloration. Species such as wasps that are capable of harming potential predators are often brightly colored. So the best way of warning in coloration would be that जैसे आपके वो शहद की मक्खी है, वो उसका way of warning its potential predators जिसको predate उसने करना है या harm कर सकता है, is by its brightly colored look. So brightly colored, and this modifies the behavior of the predator. So who either instinctively or is as a result of experience will avoid attacking such an animal. Now hoverflies are colored in the same way as wasps, and although they are unable to sting, the strong avoidance of wasps by predators gives the hoverfly some protection. So क्योंकि अवॉइड कर रहे होते वास्प को, अगर ये नहीं डरते हैं कि hoverfly के कलर सेम है, so that's why they get some protection out of that. Mimicry would be canines such as wolves and coyotes may adopt an aggressive posture, such as growling with their teeth bared to indicate they will fight if necessary. So animals have different ways of how to communicate with you. Rattlesnakes use their well-known rattle to warn potential predators of their poisonous bite. Now, sometimes a behavioral change and warning coloration will be combined, as in certain species of amphibians which have a brightly colored belly, but on which the rest of their body is colored to blend in with their surroundings. Now, when confronted with a potential threat, they show their belly, indicating that they are poisonous in some way. So, कुछ चीज़ों में how do the animals warn through coloration would be that in certain species of amphibians which have a brightly colored belly, they would but on the rest of their body is colored to blend in with the surroundings, and they would confront the potential threat by showing their belly to indicate that they are poisonous. A more controversial example of prey to predator communication is stotting, a highly noticeable form of running shown by some antelopes such as Thompson's gazelle in the presence of a predator. So it has been argued that this demonstrates to the predator that the particular prey individual is fit and healthy and therefore not worth pursuing. So sometimes animal जिस तरह हिरन भागता है, ठीक है, एकदम से ज़रा सी movement के साथ वो एकदम भाग पड़ता है, a gazelle would run. That is showing its predator that I am fit and healthy and there is no point in pursuing me. So that would also count as a matter of fact. So there are so many ways of how animals can predict. So predator to prey, then now some predators communicate to prey in ways that change their behavior and make them easier to catch, in effect deceiving them. So a well-known example is the anglerfish, which has a fleshy growth protruding from its forehead and dangling in front of its jaws. Anglerfish का क्या है, उसका यानी fleshy growth है, protruding from the forehead and dangling in front of the jaws. Smaller fish try to take the lure, and in so doing so are perfectly placed for the anglerfish to eat them. So symbiotic species would be interspecies communication, also occurs in various kinds of mutualism and symbiosis. For example, in the cleaner fish grouper system, groupers signal their availability for cleaning and adopting a particular posture at a cleaning station. So that also matters a lot. So in symbiotic species, how they work. So interspecies communication, forms of communication, functions of communication, and evolution of communication. Now students, we will study this in the next lecture. We will continue studying with the same slide of interspecies communication, the forms of communication in animals and human beings, functions of communication, evaluation of communication. So hopefully you've understood this. So good day and thank you so much.